And on Sundays, I'm bringing to you the Spiritist Review of 1858. And I'll do this until we're done with the kind of pertinent sections of the book. Now, before we begin, let us do a short prayer. Dear Jesus, please allow us to be inspired by the grand ideas and messages from higher spirits. Let us open up our consciousness and our instincts, that which is given to us from previous lives. Let us try to strive for the good and to be better and to become pure spirits someday. Amen. So, today we're talking about a section of the Spiritist Review, Moral Dissertation by St. Louis, also another section of Moral Issues by St. Louis, and Soulmates. What are soulmates? As told to us by, I believe, St. Louis also, but we'll have to read that and make sure. Now, before I begin, let me urge you, if you're interested in Spiritism, to download Spiritism 101, the Third Revelation, from my blog site, nwspiritism.com. And you can download that free in PDF form. It's also in French. It's also in Kindle and Audible and paperback format. So it's in Kindle, it's like 99 cents if you'd like to download your books on Kindle. So hopefully that would give you a quick overview. And then I would recommend you read the Spirits book. But I just think that kind of an overview of Spiritism gives you a leg up and lets you see what's, give you a better idea of what they're telling you, what the spirits are answering, the 1,019 questions that are given to them by Allan Kardec. And of course, if you want to read the Spirits book, type in Allan Kardec and space PDF, and you can find his books for free on PDF and download PDF, or go to my blog and click on his picture. So up on the right-hand side, you'll be given to the FEB book site, and you'll see a lot of Spiritist books. Okay, let us go to the Moral Dissertation, dictated by St. Louis to Ms. Dufault, I believe. I'm probably pronouncing that incorrectly. I apologize. This was given between the 19th and 26th of January, 1858. So this is St. Louis giving us a moral dissertation. An arrogant man had a few acres of good land. He was proud of the heavy ears of corn that covered his field as he looked with pity to the empty field of a humble peasant. This man used to get up at the crack of dawn, spend the whole day working the ungrateful soil, patiently collect the stones to clear the land, and till the earth to remove the weeds. Well, in his eyes, the hard work fertilized the field, and he harvested the best corn. However, the chaff still grew in the field of the arrogant man and choked the corn, as the owner bragged about the purity of his land and looked with disdain to the silent efforts of the humble man. This I tell you, that pride is analogous to the chaff that smothers the good grain. The one among you who judges himself better than his brothers and brags about it is senseless. Wise is the one who works by himself, like the simple man in his field, showing no vanity for his work. And of course, we all violate that. I mean, I have, thinking that, oh, I'm better than this person. It's human nature. And of course, that's why we're here on earth, is to kind of change our basic primitive human nature into something more advanced. And this is part of our pride that we have to do, because naturally we want to think we're better. And it all goes to, malicious gossip and all these type of things where we've all done one at a time. I just have a question I want to show you. The book, OSEP, I don't know what that word, OSEP, is one of the most incredible books I've ever read, published 1882 by the medium John Ballou Newborough. I'll have to look at that. Send me a link for that book on PDF if you can, because those are the type of books I like to read on Tuesdays, as I'm reading right now, Through the Mist. Okay, let's continue. So he's telling us what we all need to work on, and yes, we can all get better at that. We should always prize whatever anyone else's labor is. Okay, the next one. There was a rich and powerful man who enjoyed the prince's favor. He lived in palaces and had several servants willing to serve his desires. One day, while hunting, having his pack of dogs surrounding a deer in the deepest forest, he saw a woodcutter carrying a sheaf of firewood. He called the man and said, "Vile slave, how can you pass by without bowing before me? I am like the Lord. My voice decides between war and peace in the councils, and the greatest of the kingdom bow in my presence. Know this, I am wise among the wisest, and powerful amongst the most powerful, great among the greatest, and that my elevation is the works of my own hands." "Sir," replied the poor man, "I was afraid that my humble greeting would sound offensive to you. I am a poor man having only my arms by property, but I do not envy your deceitful greatness. I sleep my sleep, and I'm not afraid like you, that the Lord's pleasure may knock me down into my obscurity." Well, the prince was upset by his pride and arrogance. The most humiliated one rose against him, who was knocked down from the pinnacle of his power, like a dry leaf swept away by the wind from the summit of a mountain. But the humble one peacefully continued his tough work, not worrying about tomorrow. And that's where we all get. In fact, I've been that too, because I've been, risen in the ranks, not very high, of course, in corporations and so forth, thinking I was special, and then finding out that it's kind of horrible trying to make everyone drink the Kool-Aid that you're given to from these people who think they're brilliant because they're paid a lot, and actually some of their ideas were just ridiculous. You had to take the Kool-Aid down and give it to your employees. That's when I decided I'm not doing that anymore. I'm just going to be a worker and do my job and do the best that I can. Here's a comment. Our society encourages the competitive nature that makes us believe we are better than others. It's hard to work through that. One is judged as weak, if not a competitive nature. Yes, exactly. And in fact, I work for a corporation, and I know, I think it was General Electric did this, and I think Goldman Sachs still does that. They try, and what they did is they made this kind of, and you know how corporations work, right? They're this hive mentality. In fact, one guy described it really well to a boss of mine, and he told me, he says, the senior executives are like a bait ball, right? All these fishes going around in this bait, and you always have to stay with whatever everyone else believes. And if you get too far out of the bait ball, it's like, oh, you're going to be eaten, you're gone. But then you can't be too far in the bait ball because you don't stand out. And so, like General Electric and Goldman Sachs, and so they had this thing where every year you fire the bottom 10% of your employees. And this is horrible. And of course, I was told to do that too. And it's like, logically, people will, if someone's really weak, then yes. But to force someone to fire the bottom 10%. So if you have 10 people working for you, you have to fire one person. And my objection was that, yes, I know who the weakest person was, but that person's doing a job that no one else wants to do. And they're doing it well. Would I promote them to anything else? No, but they're doing a job no one else wants to do. If I hire someone new, they go, I'm not doing that job. So, I mean, this was, this is our false society of this, of having to be mean, and money is everything. And I'm not saying the opposite should be, because we do need to work for our worth, right? We need to earn a living, and we need to have corporations in an environment where they can fail. This is the problem with what we think is capitalism now. What's not really capitalism, such as the big banks, they cannot fail. The government won't let them. Well, they should have. A lot of them should have failed, and other corporations. So we need to have a balance. We need to have people in charge who are morally correct, and this is what we're trying to read here and tell people. Okay, let me continue. These are good discussions. Okay, number 3. Those who are arrogant, humble yourself, as the Lord's hand shall bend your pride to the dust. Listen, You were born where destiny left you. You came weak and naked from your mother's womb, like the last man. How come you raise your nose higher than your brothers, you who were born to pain and death like the others? Listen, your richness and your greatness, vanity of vanities, will escape your hands when the great day comes, like the fickle waters of the torrent evaporated by the sun. You will not take your riches beyond the lumber of your coffin and the titles engraved on your gravestone, empty words. Listen, the grave digger's dog will play with your bones, which will then mix with the beggar's. Your dust will muddle up with his, since one day both shall be only dust. Then you will see the beggar dressed in your glory. You will curse the gifts you were given, and you shall cry your own pride. Humble yourself. Arrogant as the Lord's hand shall bend your pride to the dust. And that's true. And exactly. And he's talking to the powerful and the rich. And to the powerful and the rich, in the Spirit's book, they're asked, what is the hardest task? What's the hardest mission on earth? Trial, I should say, not mission. And they say to be rich, to be powerful. And, of course, people say, well, I'll try that. But the problem is when you are rich and powerful, you can act with pride and arrogance, and everyone kisses your feet and will rationalize away whatever you do incorrectly, and will try to help you do things incorrectly and treat others however you want to treat them because you have power and money and fame, maybe. Now, all that will count against you when you go to the other side. Now, being rich, there's nothing wrong in being rich, as long as you still maintain your humility and your graciousness, and you use the money for things that will help people. And when I mean help people, that could be creating big corporations that will help people, inventing new ideas, creating infrastructure, buildings for people to live, all that. None of that is bad. It's how you use the money. Remember, when you're given money and wealth, they're on loan from God. They are not yours. You're given them because that was predetermined that you will have that success. How you use that success is up to you. And if you use it well, that is a great victory, because being powerful, famous, and rich is difficult. The problem is when you're powerful, as I've read many stories in Spiritist literature, is if you're powerful and you use it incorrectly, then you'll have many lives, possibly, in which you have to pay off your wrongs. This one woman, who was just a great woman, and she spent many lives in not very good shape. But then she finally said, look, I still haven't paid off. She was a queen of Spain, and she sent many people, signed the documents to send people to the Spanish Inquisition. Finally, she took one life, and she was just bedridden the whole time. Just horrible. Ivan the Terrible, in one of the books in Spiritist literature, I think by Yvonne Pierre, was, I think, in the 17th century. I forgot exactly what time. This poor man was terrible skin condition, could not leave the house, just a horrible life. But because in the previous life he was Ivan the Terrible. And if you ever read about Ivan Terrible, he was not a nice person. So that is the downfall. And so this is what St. Louis is saying, because he knows, because even he talked about himself, or, he wasn't a saint in his real life. He sold the things he did. He actually poisoned someone. So you never know. It's not easy. Okay. Then why does St. Louis speak in parables? And the answer is the human spirit likes mystery. The teachings are better incorporated into our hearts when we search. And of course, that's a lot of reason why Christ spoke in parables. Number 2, it seems that the teaching should be more direct these days without resourcing to allegory. You'll find it in the developments. I want to be read, and moral needs are disguised under the attractiveness of pleasure. So this is the answers from St. Louis. And it's interesting. I do a lot of videos and about the New Testament and what the New Testament really means. What it really means, and when Jesus spoke in parables, because even as we're told by the Spiritism, is the Spirit world only speaks to the people at the level of their technology and culture that they're able to. That's why you'll read many things in the Old Testament, the New Testament's like, well, I don't agree with that. That's very discriminatory and violent, right? But that's because that's what those people could understand at the time. Oh, here's another. Here, I was an executive for a big corporation, and it was a great lesson for me. My integrity became my own focus as I learned about Spiritism. Exactly. I mean, being an executive for a big corporation is a moral battle. And I'm sure there's exceptions, and I've seen people who have been in charge of big corporations. Usually, they were the original owner, who were very decent, wonderful people. But that is the exception. It's really not easy at all. Okay, let's carry on. Questions addressed to St. Louis. Number 1, out of 2 rich men, the first one was born into opulence and never experienced need. The second one owes his fortune to his own work. Both employ them exclusively to satisfy their personal interest. Who is the one mostly to blame? And the answer is the one who met suffering. He knows what suffering means. And so that may not be like, okay, well, shouldn't he use it? He had a hard life. And so this answer tells us a lot. If you know something, then you are expected to react to it. If you know about Spiritism, or let's say you know about that killing is morally wrong, and you kill, versus a primitive spirit who never knew that and doesn't listen to their conscience yet, and killed just to, feed his family or whatever, the one who's mostly the blame is the one who knew morally that it was wrong. So think about that. So and just like what Jesus said, the more we give to people, the more we expect of them. And giving means giving knowledge of Spiritism, of morally correct behavior. So the more you learn the morally correct behavior, the more you understand the ramifications of being mean to your fellow people here on earth, the worse that means that if you do something negative to them, that is worse than if someone who doesn't know anything does something bad, because you purposely went and robbed them of money or cheated them or whatever. It's not easy being held accountable. It's like a teenager. Like all of a sudden you grow up and you found out that, oh, I'm being held accountable. Look, I went too far up here. Okay. Question 2. The one who continuously accumulates, not doing any good to anybody, will he have an acceptable excuse in the idea of saving enough for their children? And the answer, it is a compromise with evil consciousness. Again, you can save for your children and your family, but you can't do anything to excess, right? You need to help people along the way. And when they said not doing any good to anybody, that's pretty blanket statement. I'm sure almost no one does that, but they wanted to ask that probably purposely in that manner, is that, help people and don't just give to charity. Go help individual people to find out and help them. Do it with knowledge of what's happening. I always think one of the things that like corporations do, like when Jesus says, don't let the right hand know what the left hand is doing, is when corporations say, they give to some something in the city or whatever, and they say, look, we gave this money to the city and look how good we are. And it's when I saw that with my own corporation, I always thought, well, they did it for the PR, they did it for showing themselves. I mean, this is they didn't do it from charitable inclinations. And so it's the same way when people just give to organizations and they don't research those organizations. And some of these charitable organizations give like 10 or 15%, sometimes less, to the people that they're supposed to work with. So research these things if you want to give to that, but find out people who need it themselves. Number 3, out of 2 greedy persons, the first one deprives himself from the necessary, dying of deprivation over his treasure. The second one is stingy with the others. He is excessive with himself. When he runs away before the first opportunity to help or of doing something useful, he does not see limits to his personal pleasure. He gets upset when a favor is asked. He wants to surrender to his caprices, which never end. Who is the one mostly to blame, and which one will have the worst place in the spiritual world? And the answer is the one who enjoys. The other one has already been punished, right? Because the first one, who deprived himself of everything, died, right? And whereas the second one is just going on, and he'll end up into this probably quote unquote pleasurable place in the spirit world where the pleasure really isn't pleasure and the people aren't very nice. There's a great story actually in one of the Spiritist reviews, I forgot what year, and the mediums meeting, they talked to this spirit who is haunting the house. And they find out that this man who haunts this house used to own the house. And so they talked to his guardian angels, his mentor. They said, well, why is he haunting this house? He goes, well, he was rich and he owned 3 houses, and he was such a miser, he lived under the stairs of the house that he's haunting. And in fact, he was a primitive spirit. He did a pretty good life as one life. And he said, okay, my next life, I want to be rich. And we told him, you're not ready to become rich yet. You're not ready. And he kept insisting and insisting. They said, okay, we'll make you rich. And he became rich. And when he became rich as a primitive spirit, he became completely obsessed over money. And all he wanted to do, and then when he died, he didn't want to leave his money, didn't want to leave his houses, didn't want to leave his property. He was not ready to understand what money is for. And so that's why this is what the spirit world does. For me, I was not ever allowed to accumulate much money because in my previous lives, I took money from people that I was responsible for. I don't know, either in government or some sort of capacity, which they said I have done many times, where I made myself rich and didn't help the people that I should have helped. I was probably a corrupt leader or politician of some sort. And now that's not going to happen. I don't get that, which is fine with me. I don't deserve it. Okay, number 4. The person who has not usefully employed his fortune while alive finds any relief in doing good deeds after death by the destination given to his fortune? The answer is no. That good that someone does is worth the cost. So do good with the money you have now. Okay. The next text is about eternal halves, which are soulmates. And before I begin, I have many questions about, will I meet my soulmate? And the answer is, depends. And let's see what this one says. Let me tell you what my idea of it. Then let's read this letter from one of the subscribers. Many times people are together in the spirit world, husband and wife, are just 2 spirits. This make, because you can identify yourself as whatever you want since you have no set gender in the spirit world. In the physical world, you do. And so many times these, let's say husband and wife couples come to earth and they're wonderful together and they just live a good life. They're very nice. They do a lot of good things. But one of the couple kind of compensates for the lack of another couple. Now, we need to be couples on earth is because we're supposed to learn from each other, right? That one person is supposed to help us rise in certain areas, and we're supposed to help the other person rise in other areas. It may be decided that, as an example, this one husband and wife lived, and they both died, and the wife died first and the husband came later. And the wife was saying, okay, this is what we're going to do in our next life. He goes, we're not going to be together. He goes, oh, I don't want that. He goes, well, we need to, because when we were married, I sort of supported you on the spiritual side, and you need to learn. You need to learn on your own how to enhance your spiritual side. And he didn't like that idea, but he goes, oh, okay, okay, I will. It was funny because it kind of sounded like me, like, oh, I don't want to do it. I don't want the hard part. So that will happen sometimes. Is that will be done on purpose. Now, some people don't have soulmates, and also remember when they talk about eternal halves, eternal soulmates, it may not be eternal, maybe thousands and thousands of years, but it may not be for eternity. But again, I read one line one time in one of the Spiritist literature talk about twin souls that were in like one body. They didn't elaborate it. But there's like two souls in one paraspirit or one body. And so there's more stuff out there than I know and that we know. There's a lot, we're being told a lot by Spiritist mediums, but there's other things out there that we still don't know. So let's see what this person says. The text below is an excerpt from the letter of one of our subscribers. A few years ago, I lost a good and virtuous wife, and despite the 6 children she left me with, I felt completely isolated when I then heard about the Spiritist manifestations. I was soon part of a group of good friends who would engage this subject every evening. I then learned from the communications received that the true life is not on earth, but in the spiritual world, that my Clemency was happy there, working like others for the happiness of those she had met here. That Clemency must be his wife. Well, there is a point about which I eagerly wish you can clarify. One evening I said to my Clemency, my dear friend, despite our love as it happened, we did not always have the same opinion in many things during our life. Why then did we have to make so many reciprocal concessions in order to live a harmonious life? She then answered, my friend, we were good and honest. We lived together, and we can say in the best possible way on this earth of trials, but we were not our eternal halves. Such unions are rare on earth, yet they can be found and do represent a great favor from God. Those who enjoy such happiness experience a delight that you ignore. Can you tell me if you see your eternal half? Yes, she said. He is a poor man living in Asia. We will only be able to unite in 175 years, according to the way you count. So here is the great example. So again, this couple sound like they had a pretty good marriage, right? Because no marriage is perfect. But even she said, no, we're not eternal halves, but we spent some good time together. Nothing wrong in that. And yet her eternal half, they can't, for almost 200 years, 175 years, they can't be together. Because probably someone had a deficiency in something, or they had to pay for something. So it just shows you. And of course, 175 years. If you're an immortal spirit and you divide eternity by 175, is nothing, right? Will the union be on Earth or on another planet? He asked. On Earth, but listen, I cannot describe well enough the happiness of those united in such a way. I will ask Heloise and Abelard to come to explain to you. Then, sir, those happy creatures came to talk to us about such unspeakable happiness. Attending to our will, they said, 2 don't do more than 1. We travel through space. We enjoy everything. We love each other with an endless love, above which there is only God's love, and that of the perfect beings. Your greatest joys are not worth one of our glances and our handshakes. The thought of eternal halves pleases me. It seems that God, on creating humanity, made it double and separating the 2 halves of the same soul. He said, go through this world and look for incarnations. If you do good, the trip will be short, and I will allow your union. On the contrary, centuries will pass before you can enjoy such happiness, meaning not doing good. Such is, as it seems to me, the primary cause of the instinctive movement that drags humanity towards happiness. The happiness which we do not understand and do not strive to understand. I eagerly wish, sir, a clarification about the theory of eternal halves, and would feel very happy if I had the explanation about this subject in one of the next issues. So it's very interesting. And the spirits have told us through the books of Jiva Owen. In fact, I go over this in, what happened? Is that not on there? There it is. Okay. I go over this in, I believe my book, Spirits in the Spirit Universe, which I talk about spirits and how they rise and how they learn, and they go through levels of education. And of course, you can't go from one level to another without having more knowledge and love and wisdom and benevolence, charity, etc. You have to have everything balanced, right? You don't just go through, 4 years of classes and you're graduating. No, it doesn't work that way. You have to earn it. You have to be ready for it, in essence. But what they were saying, Reverend Jiva Owen was saying, is that the spirit world could have made us asexual, but they wanted the people on Earth. It's like a typical heuristics. They broke the problem up into smaller modules, right? They wanted people to learn about the active and passive nature of the male and the active and passive nature of the female. So it was like a four quadrant matrix. And you had to learn about each one of them. And that's why you go through different relationships. You may change gender from one life to another, because you need to learn about active and passive in the different roles of male and female, which makes total sense. This is how you learn. And so I thought that was just extremely interesting. So that was a decision they made, and it's probably the customary one of most planets, I believe, because I haven't read of any planets yet where that doesn't take place. There's always two genders, but yet, as more advanced planets, is what they say is that childhood's like very quick. Like within a year, you're like have the wisdom of a 30-year-old here, and so those things are more advanced. So I thought, but it's very interesting. It just shows you where we are on this earth. Okay, let me bring this back up again. There we go. I think, let me see if we're done. Oh, there's more. Question about the subject. Abelard and Heloise gave us the following answers. Were the souls created as a pair? Had they been created as a pair, they would be imperfect as single. So the answer is no. Is it possible that two souls may unite in eternity, forming one whole? And they said no. So that's interesting of what I read somewhere else, saying that there's like in one whole there's two souls. So but of course you never know. The words have exact meaning, and it could be my interpretation. You and your Heloise make, since the origin, two perfectly distinct souls? The answer is yes. So still now, are you two distinct souls? Yes, but always united. And that may be, and maybe even these twin souls they talk about are twin souls, but they are united. In fact, there was a part in one of the books by Reverend Jiva Owen about 12 women who had always worked together, and they always worked together and to go up from one level of heaven to another. And that if one of them was going to say, oh, you get to graduate to the next level, they would stay at that level until all 12 were ready, and they would help the others become better and better, and to get the attributes and the knowledge that they needed in order for all 12 of them to stay together. So there's a lot of good stories about friendships, not just souls between male and female type identifying souls, spirits, but there's just a lot of information about just comrades and groups that are just love each other and support each other, and parents with children. There's another section where these two children were a higher spiritual level than their parents. And one of the higher spirits came and went to their village, and it was this like on the 9th or 10th level of heaven, pretty high level of heaven. Of course, the levels I'm saying are arbitrary. Even the spirits say, yeah, we're just, everyone has different naming conventions of levels. So, but this is a high level. They said there's 10 levels. Other people say there's 7. Some people say there's 3. And this high spirit went, and he was looking through his village and looking at people's houses. Now, at this level, people make pretty wonderful houses in great detail because they create with their minds. And you notice this house was not well designed and well kept up, and it was neglected. And so he goes to ask kind of the leader of the village, so like, okay, what's going on? He goes, well, this is a brother and sister, and they spend a large part of their time in the lower levels of heaven, still heaven, but the lower, helping their parents. He goes, okay. So he goes to their house and he talks to them. He says, look, I understand you're trying to help your parents, but you are helping your parents. And by helping your parents, you're neglecting your own learning and your own ascendancy. So let me talk to other people. Let's see what we can do about this. So he came back and he said, look, I've talked to other spirits, higher spirits. And what we will do is we'll give you missions to go to that level of heaven, and you can help people. But that's part of your mission. Then you can come back here, you can learn what you need to learn, and you can improve at what you need to improve. But you're really doing not only yourself, but your parents a disservice, because we looked into the matter. And by you constantly helping your parents, they stood back and waited for your initiative. They did not create their own initiative. It's like doing too much for your child, right? Because if you do too much, they'll just sit back and wait for mom and dad to do everything. Perfectly reasonable. So again, this shows you how much caring and guidance and interest that is in each one of us. You cannot, as Chico Xavier said, you cannot believe the amount of love that the spirit world, Jesus, has for each one of us here on earth. And so that just shows that there is so much work done on each one of us. It's just amazing. If you could look at a school and how much money is spent on kindergarten through 12th grade in, let's say, the United States, there's other naming conventions in other countries. I mean, the amount of money we put into children is quite a lot, but it's nothing compared to the amount of effort and career planning and life planning and watching constantly by our guardian angel, like, that the spirit world puts into us. It's just amazing. Okay, let's count number 5. Are all men in the same conditions? It depends if they are more or less perfect. Number 6. Are all souls destined to unite one day to another soul? Each spirit tends to look for another similar spirit, is what you call sympathy, but it may not be eternal halves. Is such a union, is there a condition of sex? The souls have no sex. There you go. As much to satisfy our correspondence as to our own instruction, we address the following questions to the spirit of St. Louis. Are the souls who must unite predestined since their origin to such a union, and each one of us has in any part of the universe their half to which will fatally unite one day? And here's the answer. This answer looks like the answer that I believe is correct, what I understand. The answer is no. There is no fatal and particular union of two souls. There is a union of all spirits, but at different degrees according to the position they occupy. That is, according to the acquired perfection. The more perfect, the more united. It is from discord that all human evils originate. Complete happiness results from concord. And so, which is very reasonable, right? Now, what we're also told, and people will say this in spiritualism, they'll say, well, when you die, you become part of the whole. You become absorbed into the whole. Well, this is not what Spiritism tells us. When you pass over, you still are your own unique personality, and you go to where there is a law of affinity points you to. You go to where there are others like you. Now, What do I mean by that? Is that, again, and a lot of spiritualists will say that, here's some more of it, is that they'll say you create your own heaven. Well, no, you don't. You don't create your own heaven because you're not able to create your own heaven. You're not that complicated yet. You're not that smart, and you're not that high level. So you're put into an area where there's others like you that could be high in heaven, low in heaven, could be in the other direction. But what does happen, and this is where these people are correct in a sense, is that as you go higher and higher, what they say is they're not sure, but you become more and more part of the whole. You become like this whale spirit, this like the mammal whale, but you swim in this ocean, and yet you still retain your unique personality and character. But that is far down the eternal ladder, right? Far down that path. Okay, number 2. How can we understand the word have, sometimes used by the spirits to designate sympathetic spirits? The answer is the expression is inaccurate. If a spirit were the half of another, once separated, they would be incomplete. Once united, do two perfectly sympathetic spirits remain united throughout eternity, or can they separate and unite to other spirits? And the answer is all spirits are united among themselves. I speak about those who achieve perfection in the inferior spheres. When one spirit elevates, they are no longer sympathetic to those they left, meaning they are sympathetic in how we kind of use the word today. He uses it more concretely, meaning they're not in affinity with. They're still loving and like to talk to them and would help them, but they are not sympathetic, meaning that they are very similar in their character and personality. Number 4, two sympathetic spirits, a complement of one another, or let me check this for a second. Okay. Or is that sympathy the result of a perfect identity? And the answer is the sympathy that attracts one spirit to the other results from the perfect agreement of their instincts and inclinations. Okay, there you go. If one had to complement the other, they would lose their identity. He's talking about the law of affinity, perfect agreement of their instincts and identity. The necessary, number 5, necessary identity to the perfect sympathy would it only consist of the similarity of thoughts and feelings, or also uniformity of acquired knowledge? It goes in the equality of the degree of elevation. So they can have little differences of knowledge and so forth, but it has to be within that degree of elevation. The spirits who are not sympathetic today, can they be later? Yes, they all will be. Thus, the spirit who is an inferior spirit today will reach by perfecting the spirit where one another resides. Their union will happen more promptly if the more elevated spirit, hardly withstanding the trials of their choice, stays in the same state. Can two spirits who are sympathetic no longer be? And the answer is certainly if one of them is lazy, meaning, so what he's saying is that two spirits who are sympathetic to let's say eternal halves, but if one eternal half saying, I'm not going to work anymore, and the other one works, goes on missions, helps other people, acquires more knowledge, they will rise in the spiritual hierarchy. They will leave that other person. And then Allan Kardec writes, these answers perfectly resolve the question. The theory of eternal halves is a figure relative to the union of two sympathetic spirits. It is an expression even used in the common language, referring to a couple, and that should not be taken literally. The spirits who have used them certainly do not belong to the highest order. The scope of their knowledge is necessarily limited. They have expressed their thoughts with the words they would have used in their corporeal life. It is then necessary to reject such an idea that two spirits created one to the other should one day unite in eternity after a more or less lengthy separation, which makes perfectly sense. They can be together for a long, long time, but it's not eternity because they'll each rise at their own level. Okay. I'm going to bring this up. So, again, I think that if you would like to learn more about spirits, what your attributes of spirits are, is I would recommend book 2, Spirits in the Spirit Universe. And I talk all about spirits, how they grow, how they mature, the missions they are sent on, what they have to go through. It's fascinating. In fact, the little tidbit is they talk in one of the books by Reverend G. Vaughan, which is the Anglican vicar, about at the 5th level of heaven, people have a choice of which road to go on, and they don't say what those choices are. So there's still a lot of things we don't know, but there's so many hints. It's the Spiritist literature is so fascinating because they give you these hints and then you want to know more. And a lot of times you just have to interpolate the best you can. So that's what I try to do in my books. I try and take like from the series of 3 books, Heaven and Below, book 1, and then Spirits and Spirits Universe, book 2, and However You're Guided by book 3. I take what Reverend G. Vaughan has and I look at it and compare it to what other Spiritist mediums, Allan Kardec, he's not a medium, but he codified a lot of information from the Spirits book, Yvonne Pereira, Divaldo Franco, Leon Denis, Chico Xavier. So I try to find out what are their information. How can we take a statement by one Spiritist medium and expand it and expand our knowledge by others? And so that's it's fascinating work, and it just gives us more and more clues to the spirit world. And then if you want to read kind of more of a overview of the whole spirit realm and the physical realm and where we are, where we're going, kind of bringing everything together from my other previous 14 books, read the Spirit Realm. Spiritism has revealed the reality of our existence. It really does go into who you are, what you are, where you're guided, and how you can ascend, and what is the future. And I go in that kind of a higher level than I do in those 3 books. And of course, I have other books besides. So I want to thank everyone for being with me tonight. And remember, if you want to be notified, subscribe and hit the bell. That will notify you when I do live streams. God bless everyone. God bless.